Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Fortitude. Hey, we're, it's like Unashamed said, on most podcasts, I know there's a lot of times, that Al and those guys say, boy, if you could see us before we started recording, well, if you could have seen us before we started, we've had all kinds of gremlins on our computers today. I thought we were in the recording studio. We weren't even in. Todd's trying to get logged on and can't get logged on, doesn't know why, so now we know why, hopefully why he wasn't. Maybe he'll be joining us here in just a minute. But, hey, man, I am excited about our guest today, Bryan Robinson of 611 Armory, based off of Ephesians 6:11, correct, Bryan?
Correct. Yep.
And Bryan also originally had 316Ts, and we're going to hear more about all that. But and there's more to come. We're really excited that we're going to be able to partner with Bryan and get our hats and shirts and a few things out there, and not to make any money on it. It just goes for me, it goes right back into just being able to have a hat out there for somebody if they want it. And just so if anybody wonders, we do. That's one of the things I do for my guests is I try to get them a hat, just to say thank you for coming on and things. Believe it or not, have been kind of tight, and I haven't had a chance to do that. And just so everybody, real quick, Bryan, I'm going to tell everybody this. So how this all worked is I reached out to I've reached out to three people. Bryan was one of them. And I thought that Bryan was another Bryan that I'm friends with on Facebook that I know does some apparel work with another guy that I know there in Monroe. And they said, no, that ain't me. That's somebody else. Well, I logged on, and sure enough, I just sent Bryan an email. And man, he popped right back. And my thing was, my sales pitch is I'm broke, man. I don't have any money. I'm not making anything off this podcast. I just order 12 or 24 hats at a time. Can you help me out? I don't want to have to order 48 or 100 or 100 of them. I don't want to do that. That's not. And to everybody else's credit, they're in it to make money, just like you are, for the most part, Bryan. And people need to know where your proceeds go to, because Al talks about it on his podcast.
Yeah.
And we'll get into all that. And so, lo and behold, the shirt that I've got on today, you really can't see it, but it's a Let's Talk Fortitude shirt. The sample that Bryan had made and sent to us. Todd's got one too. I don't know if he'll have his on today or not when he pops on. And then hats, and he's going to make these available. He offered to make these available through his website. And man, that kind of partnership doesn't come along every day. And I was very impressed with, what Bryan does with his proceeds, or the majority of them. Well, Bryan, I asked Bryan to come on, one, because he's a veteran, two, because he has a testimony. I really didn't know that much about Bryan, about his testimony, until you had sent me a text worried about you didn't want to drag things down. I'm like, no, bro, that's what we do here.
Yeah.
So, but Bryan, tell us a little bit more about yourself and how, you came into 611, but what we do here is we want to show how Christ uses others in our life to mentor us, to discipleship us.
Yep.
And what that means to us, and how that's helped us through some pretty rough times in our lives. And you've got some of that. So I'm going to turn it over to you. Tell us more about you and a Texas boy. This is a Lone Star boy.
Yeah.
So you're not far from a friend of mine there in Houston either, I don't believe. But anyway, I turn it over to you. Thanks, Bryan.
Yeah, I appreciate it, John. Thanks for having me on. And feel free to stop me at any time if you've got.
You go right ahead, brother.
I know how this podcast goes. If we want to rabbit trail off into something, we'll do it, because I do some of that as well. So let's do it. But yeah, I'm from Texas. I was the son of a Baptist music minister. So I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, and I actually was. So you probably hear this testimony several times. I was saved and baptized when I was 7 years old. So, and I wasn't there. There wasn't anybody that, made me go down and raise my hand and kind of tricked me into saying the prayer. I knew from a young age, being in a Christian home, knew who Jesus was. I knew the gospel at a young age. But I will say that, like several testimonies I've personally heard, I prodigaled for a bunch of years, and I think one of the distinction from that point until the time that I fully surrendered was the surrender that was missing. So I think that I truly knew who Jesus was. I knew the gospel. I knew that he came to die for us and for me. But at 7, I mean, I didn't understand surrender. I didn't understand much else, and so unfortunately, there wasn't a lot of, I feel like, discipleship in the church that I kind of grew up in. But honestly, you mentioned like the people, and I know you guys have done this on other podcasts that have had an impact. And I mean, it started with my dad. If had it not been for my dad planting the seeds, being the patriarch in our home, setting the example, like if that hadn't have been there, it would have probably been a different path and a different story. But I basically, I was a pretty good kid in school. I had, made good grades. Whenever I got out, I was going to go to college for business administration. And I quickly realized that I wasn't ready for college. I kind of, it was funny because in high school, didn't have to study to make A's and B's, but in college, I was like, "Whoa, this is I'm not quite ready for this." So I made a decision to join the Army. So I joined the Army it was a 3-year enlistment, and it was during a peacetime. But I was colorblind, and so I had 2 choices, and my 2 choices of MOS were 11 Bravo, which is infantry, and the other one was a linguist, a military intelligence linguist position in Korea, which could have been going back and resetting that. That could have been interesting how that would have worked out. But I chose to stay in the U.S. and join the Army. I went to Fort Benning, for basic training, and then was deployed to the 10th Mountain Division in Fort Drum, New York. So it was a short enlistment for me, but we got to, honestly, that's kind of where the prodigal for me in the military. Those who are familiar know that, smoke them if you got them is a pretty common phrase. And then, a lot of alcohol, a lot of drinking. And I just kind of got swept up in that. I sort of, I would say, metaphorically left my Bible and physically left my Bible at home and, joined the Army. So like even we had a chaplain and all that, but I just wasn't really engaged. I still prayed. I still believed, but I was definitely, on the wrong path. So I got out actually right before my battalion was going to Somalia, and I actually would have gone had it been labeled as a combat mission, but because it was quote unquote a humanitarian mission, I was able to get out and clear. But Somalia, for those who aren't familiar with that battle, the movie Black Hawk Down does a good job of portraying what happened. And even toward the end of the movie, they talk about the 10th Mountain Division coming in. I do know several. My team lead, he was from Jamaica, was a great guy, and he was a believer. But he lost part of his arm and part of his leg in that battle. So he came back. I actually saw an article. I can't remember if it was in USA Today or one of the big papers, but about some soldiers coming back and going to the Walter Reed Hospital. And there was a picture of him. And so I had reached out to him not too long after that. But, it's bittersweet. I feel like I, kind of should have been with those guys. But at the same time, God had a plan, a different plan for me. So, so I'm thankful for that. Let's see where to go from here. I kind of went, so in my 20s, I got out. I moved back down to Texas from Fort Drum, New York, and I did what every infantry grunt, the easiest job you can get is I got a security job and started working security. I then worked for the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, the prison system. Took a gang intelligence. I know it's an oxymoron, but took a gang intelligence position. Did that for a while, and then got hired on with one of the chemical plants in Southeast Texas. The chemical industry is really big, being on the Gulf. So I was able to get some short training and get a job there, and got a really good job. But I kind of just still continued this, I believe, but I just wasn't living, for God, and I just hadn't surrendered yet. I met someone actually while I was working at the prison right before I got the plant job, and we ended up getting married in 99. We had 2 kids a couple of years later, and honestly, fast forward, things were fantastic. I mean, she was a great mom, but neither one of us were in church, but she did have a Christian background. So honestly, to go back to kind of these people that have had an impact, I know my dad had been praying for me during this time, but also my grandmother, so my mother's mother. It was just, she was a matriarch, and this woman was just amazing. And I know that her prayers, were on me. There were several other people whose prayers were on me. But when my kids were about 2 and 3, I think, I was actually at the house that we had built, and I was actually just mowing the backyard. I was on a riding mower, and I didn't audibly hear from God, but I definitely very clearly heard. I just felt a conviction, and just heard, His voice say that, your kids are about to grow up and be in a home. Who is going to be the leader in this home? What example are they going to follow? And man, it just hit me like a ton of bricks, because I just remembered back to my dad and the example that he was for me. And then I couldn't see my kids coming into a home where dad was drinking sitting there drinking Crown and beer at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So right then, literally right then and there on that mower, I just prayed and I just surrendered. I just told God I couldn't do this anymore. I couldn't go in this direction anymore. That I needed Him. That I was, I've done it. I've tried to do it my way, and I was not prepared to be the father that He needed me to be. So that's kind of where I surrendered.
So, I'm gonna jump in here real quick. So, at the beginning of this, you said your dad was a pastor. Was there at the church?
Music minister. Yep, he was a music pastor.
Now, and then you just said that you would come home to him drinking Crown and Coke.
Yes, he never knew. He didn't. I never put that in front of him. I drank Crown and Coke.
Oh, you were drinking.
I was, yeah.
So it wasn't him. I thought you said he was.
No, my dad, my mom, never drank, didn't smoke, didn't.
Okay, I'm glad because I heard that.
Oh no,
I'm glad I cleared that up. Keep going, bro. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I'm glad in case the audience needed.
But no, listen. So the thing that really catches me about this, everybody, is that God created each one of us with our own DNA, and He's not going to speak to each one of us in the same way.
Yeah.
And you just think of that. You're on a lawnmower, brother.
Yeah.
You're not on your knees at a, you're not on your knees at an altar at a church somewhere. You're not at a men's retreat.
Nope.
You're on a lawnmower.
Yep.
So when our heart is right, God knows that, and He's going to speak to us at that time. I think that's awesome, man. And people need to know that. Just so, I would, in the description, if people want to, just list down there where you were, tell us about where you were the first time God really spoke to you, and let's kind of see where different people were when God really started to speak to them. Go ahead, brother. I'm sorry. Pick it back up.
No, that's great. I think that's a good, it's a good caveat and a good call out, because when you hear people say, some people remember kind of the day, that day of surrender. Some people remember the exact day to the date. What I do remember is that I was on that lawnmower. I remember it like it was yesterday. And the conviction I felt, and from that point forward, there was a change, and there's been a change. So, but you're right. Yeah, nobody was trying to convince me. I wasn't sitting in a Bible study. I wasn't, worshiping in church, or, somebody was ministering to me at that moment. I believe a seed was planted years ago. I believe a seed was planted. I think my dad was that good example, and God called me, in that moment. So, so from there, really things, things started to change for me. But I worked in a chemical plant, and I worked 12-hour shifts. And I'll be honest with you, I've done a lot of stuff with the guys out there to this point. So to this point, there's been a few years of drinking and partying and staying out late, even though I've got babies at the house. So what from there? So, God started working on me really quickly, and I knew that there were, changes that I needed to make, but I knew that it was going to be a journey, and it wasn't going to be instantaneous. One of the things that, so I had a friend who I worked with, and he was a Pentecostal guy, a believer, just an amazing guy. And I was on the same shift. We worked the same shift. So I reached out to this guy, and I was like, hey, and I told him what had happened, what the story was. And I said, and I remember I confided in him a lot. We would, we'd be out in the plant, we'd talk, we'd get into scriptural discussions. I'd have questions. I was really hungry to kind of get back, on the right track in this process. So one of the things I remember saying was, I can stop the 4-letter words, that's not a problem. I can, stop the drinking habit. I feel like, I can do that with God's help. I can do all that. But I said, my mind, I don't know how to, this stuff is always in my mind. I don't know how to stop this. And I remember him telling me, he talked about, he kind of visualized it, his own journey and kind of the sanctification process. And, he's like, you start here, and he's pointing to where we should be, but he's like, it's not for him, even, it's not been a one straight line. It's been a little up, a little down, a little up. So I remember him telling me that, but I also remember him telling me, your mind is going to be fine. You continue praying, and you get in the word, and God's going to take care of that. And he was right. At the time I was like, I don't know, I can't get these thoughts out of my head, but he was right. My mind has continued to be transformed, through God over the years.
Bryan, when you're going through this time of your life, did your dad ever say anything to you? Did he ever, pull you off to the side, or was there ever, any time of encouragement, or just him loving on you, how was that relationship? I hate to start the direction, but
No,
I'm just
that's
real curious.
yeah, that's a good question. So it's interesting about my dad is um, he I feel like I could have had him go like, "Hey, what the heck are you doing, son?" And he never really did. Like I feel like today that I wanted him to do that, but what he did do was that he continued loving on me. He continued being there for me. He continued just being dad. I would have liked to, thinking back, I'd have loved to have him crack the Bible open with me and let's have a conversation. I don't know that how I would have accepted that, but I think in either way, whatever the approach is, that he continued to love on me and and pray for me. So I can't really fault how that relationship was because dad was great. Yeah.
Cool. All right, keep going, brother.
Yeah. I from there it's been a process, and I'll say from that point until now, God's just continued to transform me. He's showed me that I'm able to do things that I would not think I could do. I'll give you an example here in a second, but um, we went on. My wife and I were serving in our church. We'd gotten back into church. We started kind of growing, and her family started going. So her brother and sister, we were all kind of going to the same church. At this time, this first church that I went to, another guy who's been an integral part of my walk was Skipper Sauls. So Skipper, bring him back up later, and you'll see where that connection is. But Skipper was a youth pastor at this church at the time. But yeah, we were doing well. We ended up moving churches at one point and joined a church in Beaumont. Continued serving. I was with the 6-year-old Awana, boys, and she was with the kids, and we were serving. We're getting ready. We're talking about going on a mission trip to Peru and taking the kids and all these things. And then fast forward, and John, I didn't tell you this part in detail, but I'll go ahead and say it now. So we were gonna do I'm gonna fast forward. So we were married, and at this point that we're about 16 years in now. And so think of married, and then maybe about 3 years later, surrendered, and then fast forward, and we're in church, and we've got this event coming up, and it's like a marriage, kind of like a commitment, like a rededication to your marriage type thing. One of the pastors, again, this guy has been a rock. Cliff Osmond was there and was leading this event. And so my wife and I go up, we take pictures with the kids, kind of a family thing. And then the kids leave, and, we do this husband and wife thing. And so I'm sitting in there, and we're kind of eating and getting ready. And this was right after church. I'm looking around, and my wife's nowhere to be found. And I'm like, man, I don't know what we're getting ready to start. I don't know what's going on. So I texted her, and she said she had a headache, and she was in another room. And so I went and found where she was at, and she looked like she was in pain. Something was going on, and her whenever I asked her what was wrong, she said that she couldn't do this anymore. And by saying couldn't do this anymore, she was referring to us and to the marriage as she kind of went forward. And I was just in that moment, I was like, I need to get the pastor in here and pray, for us. And so we did that. But we continued, and we started going to counseling, and I thought everything was going to work out. And I was like, just vigorously praying, for God to restore us and to heal our marriage and all the things. But basically, as we went forward, she kind of grew further away. There was, the enemy had entered our marriage, and I didn't realize it at the time. And it was just a train that was just steamrolling. And so we, I fought through it and just fought for the marriage and did all the things, including an intervention at the church, which was very unsuccessful. But we ended up divorcing. It was just a few months later that we got a divorce. And I remember her saying something that today I hear, and when I hear it, I cringe, because it is a lie from the enemy, and it's the kids are going to be okay. Because my kids were at this point, 10, 11 years old. They weren't even teenagers yet, and I knew that the kids were not going to be okay. And so, I continued to pray through it. But fast forward, my friend, I took counsel. This pastor that I had, there were a couple of people that I really took that just really leaned into me. And the instinct, my worldly instinct at that moment, I'm single. The kids are now going to be split, between us. It's just this thing I never expected to happen. My instinct was to just turn back to alcohol, and that was, at least in my mind, what I wanted to do. But I kept praying, and because I had such a group of men and pastors who were in my corner, I continued to speak with them, and they just kept me up during all this. And basically, I just said, I'm going to trust in God. Like, there's got to be, I can't, for my kids and for what I know is truth, I can't abandon that at this point. And so I just leaned in. And it was, I can't say that because I leaned in, that it was everything was easy, because it was the most difficult thing that I've ever been through. But because God, I'm here today. Like, it's the only reason I'm here. Not, sitting at home drinking somewhere and having pity on myself.
I get it. Bryan, I'm going to tell you, let's take a quick break.
Okay.
All right, we're back, everybody. Sorry about that. Y'all don't even know we were gone, probably.
That's right.
So I think so the support, so your mom and dad through this period of time, what were they very supportive? How were they, how did they work through this with you?
Yeah, it's funny when you do this and you do it unscripted and you're just kind of talking like God speak. There's some pieces that are interesting. But so my mom and dad stayed together until I was 25, and they divorced. It was actually a similar situation with my dad, with kind of the enemy coming in, and he tried to fight through that. Fortunately for us, for the kids, we were already grown, and I think the impact was but it was a surprise to me. And so separately, my mom and dad were very supportive. My mom's always been a rock and a prayer warrior. And again, her mom, before she died, she was amazing matriarch. But yeah, they were very supportive. But that's the kind of story with them.
So how did you lose your mom?
So it was my grandmother. So my mom's mother was my mom's mother. This was, you guys, I don't know how things have changed, seem to have changed. Everybody's distanced and separated so much now, but we, we had the typical like Thanksgiving and Christmas, get-togethers, and we go to my grandmother's, and there'd be a lot of prayer, and grandfather would always be in the word, and grandmother, and just a lot of, I mean, they were examples, and there'd be tons of family and cousins and just gobs of people everywhere. For us over the years, I've really went since my grandfather passed Labor Day years ago, which was interesting because he was the hardest working man I ever knew. And then my grandmother fell and broke her hip. You probably heard this story like this before, but then she got sick, had a hard time recovering, was in a nursing home for a little bit, and then she passed. But I was able to see her a day before she passed and prayed with her, and she was just an amazing woman. But yeah.
So is your mom still with us?
Yeah, so my mom actually has had an injury a few years ago. So she fell. It was a pretty devastating spinal cord injury. I moved her. I actually got her into a facility where she was, like closer to Orange, Texas, and then I ended up moving her out here to Conroe, to closer to us. Has gotten a lot of treatment. She's actually still in a wheelchair because of this uh, spinal cord injury. They did an emergency surgery, but she just hasn't gotten back to walking yet. So she's only in her 70s, but she's doing well. We've got her own apartment, and she's up and around all the time. She's, planting plants, and she's got blue bonnets, and she does all the things, and so she's got tons of energy. She and I talk a lot, and spiritually as well. And yeah, she's doing, all things considered, doing really well.
Yeah, my mom and dad separated whenever I divorced when I was 7 years old, 8 years old.
Yeah.
That'll all come out in my in my testimony. Todd and I are going to work on that this week. If I can get him on, I don't know what in the world's going on with this computer. If his wife was there, she's not there. If Amanda was there, they'd probably be able to get it worked out.
Yeah.
So through all this, you mentioned your pastor a lot there at the church.
Yeah.
Is that the church where you went, where you were actually attending that helped you through that period of time?
Yeah, Cliff Osmond was at we were at Calvary Baptist in Beaumont. It's a big church in Beaumont, but he was one of the pastors there. Just an amazing guy. I mean, but he was always there. Even before this happened, in times of like, hey, I need some help with this scripture, or hey, I'm stuck on that. Like, he was just always there discipling. But yeah, when this happened, he counseled us, and then he continued to counsel me, and got me through with the word and with prayer many times. But he's actually moved up to North Texas somewhere. He's in a church. He's pastoring full time in a church up there. This guy, by the way, I know he doesn't want everybody giving him superhero credits, but he and his wife have fostered and adopted, I think, something like 20 kids over the years. And he's older, he's in his 60s, and they fostered and adopted over 20 kids. It's just like, I remember whenever I would see him and talk to him, in my mind, I was always like, there's no possible way I could ever do what he's doing. Cause I'm just like, that's just crazy. I mean, that's what I thought. Right. So
were there other men in the church at that time that, anybody else, the kind of, so where were you in your walk during this time? Were you, were you, trying to walk a Christian life the best you could? So you were, it wasn't like you were still teeter-totter, and you were actually on the path to try to live your life the best that you could, as a Christian.
Yeah. And not to get legalistic about church, but the whole thing with baseball, my son was playing baseball, and he was really good at this time. We would have these stupid Sunday baseball games, and I was like, oh, it drives me nuts. So I would purposely, we'd had 3 services, 3 different times, and I'd purposely go grab him up in his baseball uniform and take him out there if I could to the 8 o'clock service, just so I could get him in there, because it just drove me nuts. So that was around this time. Yeah. Yeah. It's, and there were a lot of, I'd say there was a lot of other, just in that church, there were a few other people. But again, this guy, Dan Davis, I didn't mention his name earlier, from the plant. Just an amazing guy. Cliff Osmond, Skipper Saul's the one I mentioned earlier. He kind of pops back on the radar later in the story. But there's been several over the years who have poured in to me along the way. And in fact, something I didn't mention was that I left in 2014. This was 3 years before, or 2 years before the divorce. We built a house, we had a swimming pool, we had all these things like all the plant guys did. And I was highly convicted because we were not giving the way that we should be. And I just felt like we were just living too much, the high life, and we weren't putting God first. And so my wife and I talked about it at the time. We ended up selling that house. Her parents had 9 acres, so we popped up a smaller house over there. I also decided to leave the plant. I was working days for about a year, and I really liked working days and being able to spend the time with the kids and the family. And so when they got ready to put me back on shift in 2014, I was like, I got to do something different. So again, I don't have a degree at this point, but I said, God, I started praying. I was like, there's got to be something I can do besides this plant stuff, and I ended up getting a job, a place, it was a e-commerce company that was in town. They didn't have a position, but the guy who also was one that poured into me, Justin McCullough, was in the interview, and he was a believer. I ended up getting a job. I took a $30,000 pay cut to take this job. And, at the time I was like, I felt like it was a sacrifice. It's not, it was a small, honestly, sacrifice, like in the grand scheme, but it was, again, all this stuff was happening leading up to, 2016 where this happened. So, just to answer your question, that maybe paints a little bit of the backstory, in there. And so I took a marketing job. I started doing marketing in 2014 full time. I always wanted to do it, and I did it on the side. It started in 2003, this e-commerce stuff, selling products. I started doing some stuff on the side, and I was like, I want to do this full time. It's what my degree originally would have been in business administration. But 2014 is when I made the leap, and then I've been doing marketing ever since. And I am only in the position, my full-time position, making the money I'm making because of God. Like there's no other way. I don't have a degree. It's just crazy to be, but anyway.
Hey, so I'm going to back up just a little bit. How old are your kids now?
My kids are, so I've got a 20, I might get the ages wrong, 26-year-old son. I've got a 21-year-old daughter, and she just had a baby. So I am a grandpa for the first time. I got a grandbaby named Paul.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And then my son is, I think he just turned 20 this year. Yeah.
Now, are they all by your first wife?
They are. Yeah. And so we didn't get into to that, but I'm going to fast forward to it. So
I've got a question for you before you do that.
Go for it.
So where I was going with that.
Yeah.
Now that they're older.
Yeah.
Have they ever sat down and talked to you of the impact that had on their life when that happened? I mean, is it, how do have they talked to you about that? I mean, you may not want to even talk for them here. And if you don't, that's cool. I get it. I was just wondering if they had, because kids, man, I mean, it's tough.
Yeah.
I've been it, man. I lived it. And I guess that's where my question comes from, is to see how it affected them and how they worked through that.
Yeah.
And if they've ever, sat down and talked to you about it.
I would say my daughter has been somewhat open over the years, but not really sat down and looked back at that moment in time and given like, open up the conversation. My son has not really at all. But to answer your question, the impact was furious. It was like a, bunch of tornadoes coming through for both of them. The things they experienced from that point forward in school, and then with, anxiety and all those things that come, were really bad. And so it's really only been the last couple of years like that they're really on a, kind of getting over that hump, but no, it was awful. And so to go back and say, to hear the words, the kids are going to be okay. Like, I knew that was not true when it was being said, but I know now looking back that it's absolutely not true at all. Yeah.
You're absolutely right. I mean, that's, it's like Kenny Moore, told me whenever, he's been on the Unashamed podcast before.
Yeah.
And, when he and I were sitting down when we did his podcast, and we were talking about the things that happened to us through our life and stuff.
Yeah.
And he said, John, I'll never forget what he said. He said, those are the things who make us who we are today.
Yeah.
So you don't realize it at the time when you're going through it. When you're 10, 11, 12 years old, you don't realize it at the time. But those adversities are some of the things that make us who we are today.
Yeah.
When we get older.
Yeah.
The thing that got me was I brought the damage of that. I brought that into my marriage.
Yeah.
All these years later.
Yeah.
Or all those years later. And God just blessed me with a woman that has been willing, a wife and a helpmeet that was committed to our marriage to help me work through a lot of that. And it's been rough. I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, why she ever, if there was ever a woman that could have kicked me to the road or kicked her husband to the road and said, I am finished, I am done, I am not doing this, it's my wife, but she did not do it. Yeah. And I am so thankful for that. And I try to thank her every day. She's my best friend.
Yeah.
And it's anyway, this ain't about me. This is about you. So
it's good because I mean, there's so many people that are going through this. I just listened to another podcast. They had some guys that had gone through divorce. They had 3 of them on there, and they were talking about some of this. So like, there's so many people that have dealt with this.
It's real, bro.
Yeah, some of them are in the early stages. They just got the divorce, so they're not where I'm at. They're not where you are from the perspective of being the kids. But it's damaging. It's not what God intended. When the enemy comes in, steals that, and breaks that apart, there's going to be some devastation. But we just have to, just pray that, like you said, your wife has been super supportive. I've just leaned on God, and He's, helped me through. And my kids through prayer. I mean, I'm constantly praying every day, praying for them and the grandbaby. But for God willing, I mean, they're starting to do better. So
we'll pick back up where you were. So
yeah,
I stopped you in that moment. Yeah. And so the kids, was it a joint thing, or did they stay the majority? Were you all close enough to where they could go to the same school, or was it,
Yeah, they went to the same school for a while. The way that this actually happened, I told my ex-wife we need to tell the kids the truth, about what happened. And so we did. My son actually made the choice, and I didn't pressure him to go with Dad. So for quite a while, that was the arrangement. Was my daughter was with Mom, and he was with me, and then we would, have visitation and stuff, but didn't make it any easier, and then he ended up going, to be back with Mom later. So
Wow. Well, I know that after 16 years, man, that's a long time.
Yeah.
Dude. I mean, that you put your life into a relationship. But my thing is what I really want people to understand is that you didn't waver on your faith through this. You didn't blame God and go out on a tangent.
Yeah.
You kept your faith through this, and I admire that, brother. I mean, I think that's awesome. And so there's pick up when
Yeah.
you're out on your own now. I mean, you've got a marketing job. You've completely changed your life around, and pick her back up from there.
Yeah. So I don't. So funny enough, I actually didn't wait very long, and I wouldn't recommend this for anybody because I have a friend who was like, whatever you do, stay single as long as you can. And I was like, okay, I agree. And I didn't wait super long, and and I put up a profile on eHarmony. It's funny, but I put on there. I mean, I had a checklist of things like it can't be this, no smoke, drinking, like all these things, right? It's really kind of humorous because like I probably limited myself for whoever would fit that category, but did meet somebody. She actually had the same things checked off on her list. She had gone, her history and her past is very similar to my story. And we end up going out. One thing led to another. She's, I could easily see from day one that this was a strong spiritual, person. And so we ended up getting married, and so we've been married now 8+ years. I think this year was 8, and then she has 2 daughters. But we, so you take us both out of. She had a 17-year marriage as well, and then connect us back together. But we're both leaning on God and trusting Him to guide us. And I'll fast forward to 2020. Everybody remembers March 2020, what happened there. But right when COVID was getting ready to get kicked off, she and I had, I guess I'd say an opportunity, but there was a kid that went to school with her daughter, and there were some things going on at the home. One thing led to another, and these 4 kids needed a place to stay, a place to go, and their ages ranged from 10 to 16. And so we, temporarily, we were the only ones that the parents knew, really. So we brought these kids in, temporarily, but one thing led to another. Things happened in court, and it was basically decided that this was going to be a more permanent situation. So we fostered these 4 kids during COVID, and that ended up going 2 years from 2020. So through 2022, the mother, we stayed in contact with the mother. She ended up really getting through her addictions and got a job and started going to school and just got a lot better. And so the 2 youngest were reunified with the mom, which we're really thankful for. The oldest one aged out. She's off living somewhere else. And then the second to the oldest boy is living kind of in one of our family, living here in town. So that was, I went back to earlier and I said, my pastor had done this for years and I've seen it. And, I've been hearing the Unashamed podcast and several things I listened to talking about this new movie out about this Texas town. It's pretty, Possum Trot, but there's so much opportunity there. And if you'd asked me before, even when it was going on, I was like, I can't do this. I was telling God, like, I don't think I can do this. Like, it's too much. And these kids had so much, so many issues from their childhood, bringing that into our home. But we did it. We pushed forward, and it's something that it was a season. I felt like God, he definitely got me through the I can't do this to I'm not going to say that anymore, because he keeps proving me wrong. But yeah, that was something that um, you know there's so many kids, in the system, in the foster system. And so, like, I know that there's a big push, and there's so many people that are doing this, even through listening to Unashamed, um, and what these families have all done, and even through friends. But speaking of Unashamed, I started listening to the Unashamed podcast at that time. It was in early 2020. And I'll just say that, like, I've never heard, like, I watched, the Duck Show. I watched Duck Dynasty years ago, but and loved it. Well, I mean, watched every episode and probably reruns for years. But just to see these, to hear, these guys come back together, and just the talk, and just the main thing is Jesus, and do it in a way that's so real. And it's not legalistic and churchy and all that. And even though we all have communities in a local, church, just to be able to get with guys and have like this band of brothers or a group of people, just talk about Jesus and sit around like that. That was something I hadn't seen before the Unashamed podcast. And so, honestly, where I was that probably brought me through and helped me through a lot of the time that we fostered, because it was not easy. It was really hard. But that really was a turning point for me, I think, to even help me kind of through that.
That it was at about the same time when I found the Unashamed podcast, and that's how Todd and I, not the podcast, but WFR is how Todd and I actually ended up, meeting. And I went to the first men's retreat they had, and my prayer partner ended up being Todd's table leader on the following. And he got the two of us together, and we met one day Todd called me and said, "Hey, you want to get together?" I said, "Sure." So we drove about halfway and made it a Dunkin' Donuts, and 6 hours later, now you can't shut the two of us up or get us apart. So yeah, it's been a great, but yeah, they've had a tremendous impact on a lot of people, millions, not thousands, but millions of people.
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome. And just so everybody knows, that's the gospel symbols that you have on your hat and your shirt actually came from Bill Smith when he led Phil Robertson to the Lord. And so that's where if you're wondering if you've ever seen that before, yep, you have. And it's not copyrighted. They don't trademark that. They said, "Hey, no, we want this out to as many people." And that's the heart of them people. Yeah. And so, that bleeds over into a lot of others. So how long did you and your current wife how long did it take before you all got married once you first met?
You actually want to know?
So you don't have to answer, brother.
No, I will. I'm just not going to advise anybody to go down this path. It just was, I'll have to say it was God. We're 8+ years in, so it must have worked, but it was literally 2 months.
Well, I thought you was going to say 2 days or 2 weeks or something. No, man, that's cool.
No, it was 2 months. No. Yeah, I mean, I hate to say when but like, I don't really even know what to say. Like it could have gone badly, because I think in a situation like that, if you kind of take your eyes off of God and you're worried about, like, I've got to have a companion. I need a companion. If that's the focus, then that can take you off into focusing on that and then possibly making some bad choices. But fortunately, I think because I was focused on God and he knew my heart, he put us together. I mean, there's no other way to explain it. I can't say it any other way. So, yeah, very, very, very blessed.
So along the way, so you're doing marketing.
Yeah.
What possessed you to start 316 Tees back in the day?
Yeah. So I had since '03, I started doing e-commerce stuff. I started up, I had a security background at that time. So I started like a pepper spray and stun gun store. I bought this $60 eBay store and then I had to figure out, okay, how do I get traffic to it? And back then it was a lot different, but I was like, okay, I need to put some content. I need to do some things, make a video, do some stuff. So, I mean, it's a lot of the same things, but ended up doing well with it. And I sold that. But then at some point, the 2003 thing was kind of pre-surrender. And then after that, once I surrendered and I was still enjoying this marketing stuff, I was like, I wonder if there's any like Christian t-shirts, something along that line. And so I actually did a couple of sites like that and sold. There's a couple of old brands. There's Sanctify used to be a brand back in the early 2000s. The C28 was a brand. Both of them closed down since then, but and then Caruso even has been around for a long time. I was doing some of their stuff, but I was drop shipping. That's when I started drop shipping. So fast forward, when COVID and all that, I was like, man, I want to do this stuff again. And I was like, there were enough tools and there was now print on demand, that wasn't before. And so I was like, I can just put some designs up and do some things. And so I just started creating some scripture inspired designs and started trying to sell them. And that's when I started listening to Unashamed. There was a veteran, I think she was an Air Force or Navy veteran. I can't remember for sure, but she emailed me and said, hey, what are the chances you could put those 5 symbols on a shirt? And I was like, let me check, and I wanted to kind of get permission. So I reached out to Al and he was like, yeah, no, there's not a copyright on it or whatever. And go for it. But it was actually this shirt that I, said, hey, what if I'd asked Al, what if I put the symbols on there and then we raise some money for One Kingdom for missions? Oh yeah, that'd be great. So Al and brother Phil actually held this shirt across the table and talked about it. And it was tons of orders, and I was able to give some money to One Kingdom through that. So it was pretty cool. But yeah, that's kind of how I got kicked off or kicked back into this. I ended up selling that site at the time, and then kind of took a break. And then this last year in 2023, a friend of mine, so Skipper Sauls, I mentioned earlier, has been doing mission work for several years now through wingsofpromise.org is the website. But they've done things through hurricane, relief, building homes for people. They've traveled out to Kentucky. There was tornado damage years ago on homes, and they've helped partner with people and do that. They fed 350 homeless every, I think, 3 weeks in Beaumont. But the thing that they started doing and they were doing more of was going to Nicaragua and Panama, to these remote places where, the gospel wasn't reaching a lot of these places, and building churches. And he's actually right now in Panama. They've been working on 2 churches on remote islands that are, I don't know if you've seen Sound of Freedom, John, but the boat that in that movie where they go on this long boat ride out in the middle of nowhere to this island like that, when they go to Panama, they ride a bus for 3 hours and they get on a boat for 7 hours. And that's where these islands are at. So they're out there doing this work. But he had asked me, can you help me? This was back in maybe August, September of last year. And I said, sure. What do you need help with? And he goes, well, I need to see about some marketing help. And then we just lost a grant that we were getting. Maybe you can help me with fundraising. So I was like, yes, I'll help. I wasn't sure yet. So I started kind of digging into that. But I went down to Nicaragua on a mission trip with them in October. Man, I can't tell you. I wish I'd have gone on the one in Peru. I wish I'd been on mission trips before, but this thing really just was amazing. Not just the work they were doing, but like, we would go places, and I mean, you talk about what the Robertsons are doing. Um, I'm with Skipper, and this guy's like, and I describe him. He's like a Paul the Apostle and John the Baptist. He's just in the weeds. He's down there doing it. He's just reaching people, and it's all God. Like, it's not Skipper. It's all God. But it's just really cool work. So I came back and tried to figure out like how to fundraise. Well, as you know, the economy's been taking a hit, and fundraising for most nonprofits is down quite a bit right now. So I said, well, maybe I'll try to do it with merch, and that's kind of where this hat came from. And 611 Armory really got kicked off with the idea of I want to try to raise some money for missions. If it's not about hey, can you donate $20 a month? Maybe somebody will buy a hat, and then we can donate some proceeds over there. So that's kind of how it started. Let me know where you.
No, you're good.
Okay.
I was just so that kind of let everybody know. So I'm watching the Unashamed podcast. It's been, I don't know how many episodes back. I'm guessing it's probably been 2 or 3 weeks, maybe 4, something like that. I can't. Yeah. Time flies anymore, bro.
Yeah.
And so, and I guess telling everybody in the introduction when we were going through the introductory thing, Al, Jace was talking about throwing a guy a $20 bill or something. He was speaking because he brought his Bible or something. And Al said, yeah, he said, Bryan, you may want to send Al some merch or Jace some merch so he doesn't go broke,
right?
With gifts. But
yeah.
And that's whenever he was talking about your hat, and
yeah.
And before that, so let me back up even a little bit further. Todd, who was supposed to be with us today, my co-host, he's having technical issues. Bless his heart, man. He hates missing these. I know it's killing him. Yeah. But Todd, we'll get you next time, brother. Yeah. We'll get it all figured out. Chad will help us get the tech issues figured out.
Yeah.
So Al had on the hat I think that you've got on now.
Yeah.
And I just so happened on Facebook, I follow the Unashamed, thing there. So I see their posts, and I saw where Amanda had asked, hey, where did Al get that hat that he's wearing? Mm-hmm. And so lo and behold, a couple of episodes later, whatever, when we started talking, I sent her a message. I said, this guy, go to this site. This is where you get that hat.
Yeah.
So when he said, because here I am trying to figure out what I'm going to do about my merch or whatever, trying to get a little something to give my guests, and Al mentioned, hey, this is Bryan with 611 Armory. So I did some research and sent out some emails and got onto your website. And I just filled out the your thing. And I said, hey, I'd like to talk to you about hats. And besides, hey, would you like to come on the podcast?
You're right.
The next thing I know, you responded. I'm like, hey, this guy. And so we're, next thing I know, we're on the phone, we're talking, and there's been some things happen. I'm not going to go into everything, but I'm just going to tell you through some things that have happened since Bryan and I have, been connected and started this friendship. His integrity, man, is off the chart. And I'm not saying that to make your ears glow, with sunshine. But people need to know who they're dealing with, and I don't, take it lightly by attach myself to as well, just like you do. You have to be careful, But over the last few weeks, Bryan has, and I told everybody there's a big announcement to be made. Bryan said, "Hey, if you're okay with it, I don't care. I'll put your shirts and your hats on my website and promote it for you." And I'm like, wow. So there's no contract. I'm old school, bro. I'm an old West Virginia hillbilly. I still believe a man's handshake or a man's word means something today.
Same.
And so Bryan's going to carry the hats on there. And again, our proceeds, Todd and I have talked about it. the whatever the cost of the product is will go right back in to more product so that it's available. But what I'd like to do is we'll figure out the percentage or whatever is going to do. But a big portion of what comes out of whatever our side of it is going to go is going to go to One Kingdom.
Yeah,
because of what WFR has meant to us. Robert Abels, who's one of the guys that heads that up, has been on the podcast. We've actually had him and Mike Kellett both on. If you want, whoever's watching this, if you want to go back and scroll back through the episodes, they talk about the history of One Kingdom and how it all got started. Because One Kingdom, people don't know about this. One Kingdom is not attached to anything globally. One Kingdom is WFR. And now it's its own entity within WFR now. It's not connected, through the church, however they do that.
Yeah.
But anytime disaster happens, when Hurricane Ian hit here, man, they had a trailer and they were on their way to Fort Myer.
Yeah.
I don't know if they went into Texas. I know that they had gone up into where all the tornadoes had hit in the Midwest this year.
Yeah.
They're all the time doing something. And I thoroughly believe in what they're doing. And it's a fantastic, and then One World Radio that they help sponsor. They support tons of down in Nicaragua. They have a ton of people there. They went to Athens, Greece to help kind of support and encourage Larry Bowles with what he and his wife do with Acromills there, where they're with their ministry out of Athens, Greece with the refugees. So I firmly believe, and who knows, maybe we can, take a portion of that. We'll work through and talk about, maybe doing something to help Larry. But, here's a fantastic thing that Larry told me when he was on, I think back in 2012, I could be wrong. Larry, if I am, please forgive me. But I believe he said since 2012, they've never had to ask for a penny.
Wow.
They've been fully funded since then.
Wow.
And it's amazing.
Amazing.
And so I'm excited, man, about the partnership that we're developing. And I can't wait for the first time I get a chance to, Todd and I'll get a chance to shake your hand, hug your neck. Yep. And even Chad is wanting to get in touch with you about doing some things for and with Forerunner with you. Wow. So who knows where that may go. Awesome. And I think I'm just very encouraged that a man's been able to go through what you went through and kept your faith, didn't waver. And now, God has blessed you with another wife, and you guys are, living this walk together. And I think that's awesome. And I just pray that God's blessing would be upon you and your wife, man, and your business and your job. That's like us, we don't make anything off this. I can't really say that truthfully now. I think last time Chad checked, we'd made $2.
There you go.
But that's not why we do it, man. I mean, we've all agreed that's not why we do it. We do it to get out the gospel of Jesus Christ and bring encouragement to others. Yeah. And hope. And because, man, this world will chew you up and spit you out and not think twice about it.
Yeah, 100%.
And and hopefully, man, so another good friend of mine, well, he's become a good friend. We've never actually met in person yet either, sort of like you, is Bryan Sexton, and he's good friends with Al. Yeah. Good people, man. And they're doing a quick shout out. If you want to go check it out, I got to get a hold of Bryan to get an update, but they're November 8th. They're doing Al and Lisa are doing a marriage and encouragement conference with Bryan at Bible Apostolic Church in Huntington, West Virginia. As far as I know, the venue hasn't been moved. I haven't heard anything from Bryan. But anyway, brother, I'm excited, man, about what's going to happen and where God's going to take this thing with our relationship. And
for sure. Yeah,
I hate Todd couldn't be on here to meet you, but we'll get you back on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I agree on One Kingdom. they're doing amazing. We just had Hurricane Beryl come through and barreled through my town. It was only a Category 1 here, but it hit the all these islands, Caribbean islands. Just devastation, left devastation in its path, and One Kingdom was just immediately raising funds and going and helping and doing things. I stand firmly behind what they're doing. I love what Brother Larry's doing. I haven't met him, but I've heard him several times on Unashamed, and just love hearing him talk and preach and talk about Greece and all the things that are going on. But yeah, as far as our partnership, we'll tell you, I have tried to ask whenever I was in a position where I didn't know near as much as kind of what I do about selling stuff and kind of some of this marketing things. I've asked people for help over the years. There just aren't that many people that are willing to do it. I'm blessed to have a job where God's providing through the job, and I just don't need to do that here. And so I can partner up with guys like you, and you guys are doing. I love the podcast. Coming to know you through an email was great. My favorite thing is to hear from customers, and I've heard because I put on there that we're veteran owned. I hear from veterans a lot. And I just enjoy, interacting with people and, able to make partnerships whenever we can. So, yeah, I'm open to doing it, and I'm excited about it.
Just so you guys know, so when Bryan told me when we first started this, he said, man, I'm really not looking for that. I said, no, dude. I'm a former business owner, and websites cost money.
Yeah.
Freight is not cheap today.
Yeah.
You and I had that conversation about what it costs to just ship a hat. That's it.
Yeah.
Like I tell you, I sent 4 of them to Pennsylvania today. I'm about passed out.
Yeah.
But that's what I do. That's that's why I was telling you, when you contact somebody, say, look, man, I need some help. I give these away. I'm not selling these things.
Yeah.
Now, the ones that are going to be on your website, we are selling those, and the profits, like we said, will go to a great cause. Yeah. We're not getting rich off of this venture. We both have regular jobs.
Yep.
But I'm just, so when Bryan, and I said, no, I'm not doing it. I said, no, if we can come up with however you want to do it, we'll split it down the middle, whatever you want to do, whatever you agree with. But no, you're not doing this for nothing, man. I will not do it. You can just send me my hats or whatever, but I'm not, because that's not how a partnership works, man.
Yeah.
I mean, that's you and I had one of those conversations about being in business. And then whenever I roll into a house and they started talking about, I'm a Christian this and Christian that. And that's when I said, I need to run out the front door. And I hate to be that way, but hey, that's the truth.
100%. No. And I think, again, for me, and you mentioned it a minute ago, I want for the Let's Talk Fortitude merch, from my side, for anything that's not going to you, I want it to go to One Kingdom. So I'll just go ahead and say that now on the podcast. That'd be the place that I would put it. So
now listen, folks, it's not like we're we're not promising thousands of dollars.
No. If it's, I don't know if it's $20 or $500, but I would like to send that there, because it's I'm doing it. God's given us giving you this platform and given the Unashamed platform, and it's to grow the kingdom. It's to save the lost and to sanctify those who are saved. So I think that's why I want to continue doing that through. And these missions need us. These Christian missions like One Kingdom need every one of us to even if it's $5 for. I mean, heck, if 1,000 people gave $5, there you go. It's a pretty good chunk. So,
hey, if I can fill up their tank one time with gas, man, I feel like I've gotten them part of the way there to do whatever they do. That's a tank. That's money they can spend somewhere else.
Yep, agreed.
Because I'm going to tell you what, Robert Abels and those guys that do that, Randy Kirby, now he volunteers. He's part of that the organization there now, or the leadership with One Kingdom.
Yeah.
They're just tremendous people, and on top of that, they've just played such a huge role in my current walk with Christ, and that's my way of giving back.
Yeah.
You know, that's, and listen, I'm gonna tell y'all, just so you know, this is not a cheap t-shirt. It's a great t-shirt. My wife felt of it and she's like, so here's what she says. Is that the t-shirt we're getting when, because I ordered some shirts from Bryan's site whenever the shooting happened with President Trump. And
yeah, that's right.
And she, don't let me tell you something. She can hear me, by the way.
Okay.
So I got the shirt, you know, we'd already ordered shirts from you.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, what about this? Would you wear one of these shirts? She said, no, I don't think so. But she ordered the Faith Over Fear shirt. She loved that shirt.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so yeah, okay, I get it. But at least we're supporting, you know, we're supporting Bryan now.
Yeah.
And listen, folks, he's a veteran, he's a Christian, and what money that he donates is going to a great cause wherever it goes.
Yeah.
And I trust him, and I will always trust him until he, like anybody else. Till you ever give me a reason not to, brother, you got my full endorsement. Yeah. And I love what you're doing. I think it's a great thing. His shirts are great. Yeah. Quality's great. The website's really easy to use if anybody wants to go and navigate it. If you want to see, you know, and two, don't forget, and I'm going to tell everybody on here, so I hold you accountable. I need you to get me a little write-up, sort of like, you know, so that I can make sure that we give you a run on here.
Yeah.
You know, for your advertising. All right, everybody. So now everybody sees me looking this way. That's because my computer is sitting here and my camera's there now. It's not coming through my computer. And I'm having to get used to this. So everybody just be, you know, it's not like I can see Bryan, but I'm looking at him. But I'm looking at my computer. So anyway, that's why it's like that.
Hey,
Bryan, tell us. Go ahead.
I was going to say one last thing on the shirt before I forget this. So we might need to get your wife's input, because we can also, besides that design you have there, that little simple one you have there, that's maybe it's a little more manly. We can create a few that aren't so manly for your podcast. So I'll just keep that open, and we'll talk about it later.
Cool. So tell everybody how they can you know, find your tees and your website and everything.
Yeah. So 611armory.com is the website. And again, I can't say enough for Al, because every time Jace or somebody doesn't know, he's like, oh, somebody sent us some stuff. Al's like, that's Bryan over at 611 Armory. So I'm so thankful for that. But yeah, 611armory.com, 611, as you mentioned earlier, John, is inspired by Ephesians 6:11. Right now is a time that we need to be standing firm. I mean, more than ever. And so that's kind of why I chose that one. But yeah, you can go there. We've got an Instagram channel. There's a Facebook channel. And yeah.
Look, bro, I appreciate you being on here. And before we jump off here, I do want to tell everybody, hey, go to forerunnerproductions.com, forerunnerproductions.locals.com. You can keep up with Chad and everything that he's doing. I do know that Parallel the Triad is getting ready to release. He talks a little bit more about that on our prior podcast. He jumped on when Todd and I were just kind of giving an update of where we've been for the last week. We keep Chad and his wife in their prayers. She's getting ready to fly out to LA to take the bar exam. And then when she comes back, then she is actually going back out to LA. She's been accepted. She graduated law school from, I'll think of it here in a minute, there in Virginia Beach. And where did she graduate? Anyway, I'll think of it in a minute. Anyway, she graduated law school. She's going back to Loyola there in LA to get a specialty degree in law with entertainment law. So she's taking the boards out there or the bar exam. She and Chad are going to drive out. He's going to leave her there, and then he's flying back. So they're in the midst of trying to find a job out there, trying to find a job out there, whether he transfers with his company, his current company, or does he stay here for that year? It's tough. You know what it's like being away from your family. So y'all please keep him in the jail. It's Chad in the jail, Garrett. Please keep them in your prayers. They're newly married, just over a year, and being in the Navy and being away from Ev at times, I get it. I totally get it. It's tough. But anyway, if you want to donate or whatever to help Chad and Forerunner Productions, he's rebranding right now and getting ready to do some new things. But anyway, thank you all so much. And now you can now catch us on all your podcast platforms. We are back, finally back. You can catch us on Apple Tunes or Apple Play, not Apple Tunes, Apple Play. I don't have Apple Play, Spotify, Podbean. I use Podbean. That's just easiest for me. And that way you can listen without having to watch and burn up a bunch of stuff. A lot of people would rather listen because everybody, our podcast ranged anywhere from an hour to 3 hours. JJ's went 3 hours. This one, we've been on here now for an hour and 20 minutes. I get it. But that way, when you get out of your car, just like when I listen to Chuck Swindoll on Podbean, I get out. When I get back in, it kicks right back in, picks right back up. So, Bryan, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
This podcast, we'll release it on Monday. You guys already know because it's released. But anyway, guys, we're going to get out of here. And if I can figure out how to operate this board again, Bryan, we'll see if we can't get us out of here. But
sounds good. Thank you for having me on, John.
Don't jump off yet. As soon as I kill this, we'll talk a bit on the backside. Hang on 1 minute.